So what I want to do is show you how to make this easy, how to make it delicious, and how to make it successful so on your very first try it works for you, okay? I've got a really great endurance for making mistakes and trying again, but I know a lot of people don't. So let's make it so you guys can have success on your very first time. Now this guy right here is, I love this gadget. It's a Salad Master chopper, and I love it. But you don't have to use this. You can use a knife. You can use your food processor. You can use a grater. You can use anything you want. I just like it because it's really handy, and it makes things really quick for me. And by the way, if you want to learn how to get one of these for free, come talk to me afterwards. All right. So here's my little graters. Like I said, you can use your food processor, grater, whatever you want. I'm just going to put this little blade on here. Now, first of all, we're going to make a sweet breakfast sauerkraut. And no, who wants to eat cabbage for breakfast, right? Nobody, not me. Make sure, rule number one, when you're making lacto-fermented foods, be very clean. So if you've got some bad bacteria on your counter, on your hands, under your nails, if you sneeze into it, whatever, that's going to ruin your probiotics, okay? So you need to make sure you're really clean. Make sure there's no soap residue on your dishes because soap kills bacteria. So if you have any soap residue that's not rinsed off, it's not going to work either because the soap will kill it. So aside from being clean, making sure there's no soap residue, make sure you have very fresh fruits and vegetables. If you have fruits and vegetables that are kind of dried out, it doesn't work well. If you have them old, it doesn't work well. So when you're getting your cabbage, when you're getting, this is jicama, make sure it's nice and juicy and fresh and watery. If you can get organic, organic is the best because then you're starting out at a higher baseline. You're starting out with more nutrition, no pesticides. If you've got a lot of pesticides on your vegetables, those are going to kill the pests, which are the bacteria, right? So try to get it organic. Make sure it's clean and juicy and fresh as possible. So we're just going to take a jicama. A jicama is a Mexican potato, and it's got a really light and crispy texture to it, and it kind of tastes like a mix between like an Asian pear and I guess it's kind of like an Asian pear. So it's kind of sweet, really juicy, nice and crispy, and I find that it works really well instead of cabbage as the base. Now the other reason jicama works so well, and that's called jicama with a J, J-I-C-A-M-A. It has a really hard skin on it, so peel the skin off. I've done that already. But probiotics are pro means helpful or good. Biotic means bacteria. So prebiotics, that's something else that's really important. A prebiotic is something that supports or feeds the probiotic, okay? So prebiotics are things like, there's lots of things. So we'll start with, have you guys heard of inulin? Inulin is a prebiotic. A lot of your probiotic supplements have inulin added in because that feeds your probiotics and keeps them alive. Some foods that are prebiotics, I wrote them all down so I wouldn't forget, but I can't find them now. I'll just tell you what I can remember. Prebiotics, your fresh herbs are prebiotics, okay? So any like basil, marjoram, oregano, mint, that kind of stuff, any of your fresh herbs. Asparagus, jicama has a lot of inulin, a very high amount of inulin in there, which is a prebiotic, which makes it perfect for making fermented foods because the inulin in the jicama is going to feed the bacteria, right? Let's see, what else? All your cruciferous vegetables are really great prebiotics. So your onions, your garlic, cauliflower, broccoli, did I say garlic? All those things are really, really great prebiotics. Okay, so I just ground up the jicama in there. And you see this? It's just kind of shredded up really nicely. Don't even have to back over it with the car. And we've got an Asian pear here. And these are really crunchy. Now, you wouldn't want to use just a regular apple because you need something that's really juicy but firm. If you start out with soft produce, it's going to make like a mushy kraut or a mushy products. So you want something that's starting out really crispy and really juicy, and that's going to make your best texture of finished product. So we're just going to put like let's put 1.5 in there. Isn't is great. Then you don't need a cutting board. You don't need anything. You just go like this into one bowl and you're done. Okay, so we put 1.5 of those in there. Then I'm going to add some lemon zest. I've already zested the lemon here. Put that in there. And I'm going to add the juice of the lemon that I zested. And again, remember, fresh and organic if possible, especially if you're using the lemon zest. Make sure it's organic because you don't want the pesticides going in there. All right, so lemon, and then we're going to spice it up. So this is going to be like an apple pie sort of sauerkraut. It's going to be really delicious. So what else goes in apple pie? We've got the apples in there, and what's next? Yep, cinnamon. Okay. Now do this according to taste. All the Cafe Janae recipes, I give you something to start with, which I'd put like a teaspoon in here. But everybody's tastes are different. I like my stuff really, really spicy. You might not, so just kind of do it according to taste. Make it what you like. Vanilla, right? This is white Mexican vanilla. So I'm just going to throw a little bit of that in there. What else goes in apple pie? Allspice, right? So we're just going to sprinkle a little bit of that in there. And nutmeg. Little tiny bunch of that in there. Now I'm going to put in some stevia because I want to sweeten it, but I also don't want to put sugar in there. If you can use stevia, it's a non-calorie, no glycemic index sweetener. It's made from the leaf of an herb, and it makes it so you can sweeten things without adding sugar, and I really love that. Now, stevia is very potent. See this little spoon? That's equal to a teaspoon of sugar. Okay, so you just use a tiny, tiny bit. I'm just sprinkling it in there a little bit. We'll taste it later to make sure it tastes good. I'm wearing gloves because I don't know. I do know where my hands have been, but I'm just using gloves so that I can make sure everything's nice and sterile. But if you're at home, just sanitize your hands really well and you're great. Now for each quart of sauerkraut you're going to make, you need about a tablespoon of salt. Where's my spoons? Now what the salt does, this is really important. The salt makes it so the good bacteria in your food it creates a balance, right? So bad bacteria cannot survive in a salty environment. That's why they pickle things with salt and they preserve meat with salt, right? And so if you put salt in there, the bad bacteria can't take over before enough good bacteria grow to make the lactic acid to preserve it, okay? So the salt makes it so you get a good jump start on the bad bacteria not growing. And then, let's see, oh, here they are, right in front of me. Now, remember how I told you usually the bacteria comes from the soil and the air? Well, since we don't have bacteria in the soil and the air, one thing that kept going wrong for me over and over again is the bad bacteria would take over before the good bacteria could grow, and then it would just have an off taste or it just wouldn't work at all. So what I started doing was taking a probiotic capsule and just putting that in there at the very beginning, and what that does is it just kind of gives it a little jump start so that you've got enough good bacteria in there. So instead of taking 3 or 4 days for the good bacteria to build up, they're in there from the very start. And so that makes your success rate go up big time if you just put a little bit of probiotic in there. Now, you don't have to. It works with just salt. But I found that if I just want to not worry about it and make it work every single time, it's worth putting a couple probiotic capsules in there from the very beginning. How powerful? These ones are 20,000 each capsule. So basically my rule of thumb is like for a quart, I want at least 20,000 in a quart. And sometimes I'll put a little more in just depending on what it is I'm working with. Now, the second thing you want to do after you've grated the vegetables, put everything in, you just want to make sure that the cell walls of your vegetables or fruits are kind of broken down a little bit. So what you do is you just get in there with your hands, or you can get in there like with a, those little wooden mallets, like a wooden tamper sort of thing or a meat tenderizer. You can just get in there and you just want to tamp it a little bit or massage it a little bit until the juices start to come out of your fruits or vegetables. And once the juice starts coming out, we're going to use that juice as the brine for the lactofermentation. Now with fruits, you don't have to do it as much with the fruits as with the vegetables. So I just don't want this to turn out mushy, so I'm just mixing it a little. And we'll test this to see how it goes. Let's see. Do I have a little fork somewhere? Tasia, can you bring me a fork, Bubby, please? Thanks. All right, well, she's bringing me a fork. I can take one question. Yes?
Is stevia and
Raptura is a, thank you. It's made from cane sugar, and it's a crystallized cane sugar. So that comes from sugar cane, Raptura does. Stevia comes from an herb, which is a leaf. Okay, so I'm just going to taste it. What I'm tasting for is to make sure it's sweet enough. Make sure my spice balance is right. And it is. It's great. Now you can't see it because it's not a glass bowl, but at the bottom there's like this much of a puddle of the juice down at the bottom, and that's what I'm going to make for my brine. Now remember how I told you in the olden days they made fermented vegetables in crocks, in big clay crocks. Well, a couple problems with that. The big clay crocks sometimes had minerals or metals or something in there that weren't very good for you, so they'd leach out into your food. Also, you've got the volume problem. But with the crocks, what they would have is, so you'd have a big clay crock, and then you'd put a lid on it, and it would have a water seal around the top of the crock. Now, your friendly bacteria or probiotics are anaerobic, which means they grow without, aerobic means oxygen, and means without, and so it means they grow without oxygen. So if you have oxygen while you're lactofermenting, it's going to favor the bad bacteria instead of the good bacteria. Anaerobic environments favor the good bacteria. So you want to make sure it's airtight, and you want to make sure no oxygen is getting in, okay? So the way I do this, there's two ways to do this, and I'm going to show you real quick. So you just start loading up the jar. I love using glass jars because this is the perfect amount so that you can eat it for a little while without getting sick of it. And it's also a good size to fit in your refrigerator when you're done. And the other thing is when people used to ferment all their things in crocks, they would have it fermenting in their crock for months. This is my mom over here, and we started our fermenting adventures together. Didn't we leave it in the closet for like 3 or 6 months when we did it at first? Yeah, so you had to lacto-ferment your stuff for like 3 to 6 months before you could even eat it. By doing this jar method, you can do it in 3 to 4 days instead of 3 to 6 months, okay? So the same job in a few days instead of months. You don't have gallons of it to eat. And you can have some variety, so you can have a whole bunch of different kinds of things that are more interesting than all the same. So here's, I'm getting kind of messy up here. Okay, so what you want to do is pack it until it's 2 inches below the top of the jar. Now the reason for this is you need, when the fermentation starts to happen, one of the byproducts of the bacteria fermentation is lactic acid. The other byproduct is carbon dioxide. So you'll see, if you're doing it right, you'll see little bubbles starting to form around the food in the jar. As the bubbles start to form, it's going to push the liquid up and explode over the side. So anybody that's tried fermenting before knows what a pain it is to wake up in the morning and you've got cabbage juice all over the floor, right? And so there's a couple ways to take care of this. You want to make sure that there's 2 inches there, and 1 inch is for airspace, because it's going to rise. You're going to fill it up in a day or two with all the fluid, and you don't want it to overflow. And then you want 1 inch of juice or brine space to cover it to make sure all the vegetables are anaerobic or under the water, not exposed to oxygen. I'm going to show you a little trick that I learned how to make sure, because the other problem that I had was all the stuff would float up to the top, so even if I had enough water on the top to keep it anaerobic, all the stuff would float to the top, and then the top would get moldy because of all the stuff floating on the top. So check this out. You guys are going to love it. So whatever you're using, cabbage, or I'm using jicama here, or whatever fruit or vegetable you're using, you just make it so it's the size of the jar lid. You pack it till it's 2 inches down. Good way to know 2 inches. From your top tip of the finger to your knuckle, that's 1 inch. And then measure on your hand how much 2 inches is. Mine is to the bottom of that knuckle right there. So I can just measure to make sure it's 2 inches. You cut it so it will fit in the jar. It's just a thin, flat piece of cabbage or jicama or whatever you've got. And you stick it in there. And you do a couple layers alternating around the jar like that. And then you press it down, and it keeps all that grated food from floating to the top. Then you've got your water ring on top, which makes it so you don't get any air in there, and it remains anaerobic. Cool, huh? Yes, I thought so too. And then if you've got any little floaties, you can just pull them out. And ta-da, you have 1 inch of airspace, 1 inch of water lock. The flat stuff is keeping it down, and everything is anaerobic. Pretty cool, huh? Now, it's really, I mean, it seems complicated, but once you know all the rules, it's pretty easy, and you can have success every time. Now, I just want to introduce you to something super cool that I just found. If you're still worried about it, or you don't want to inoculate your stuff with probiotics, you can make it with just salt. And instead of that humongous crock, do you guys see this? It's called the Perfect Pickler. And what this is it's the same thing as around the top of the crock, the water lock. This is a water lock on top of here. So I just want to show you how this little baby works. And this makes it so your success rate will go up. So inoculating it with friendly bacteria makes your success rate go up. Putting the layer of something on top to push everything down makes your success rate go up. And here's our little Perfect Pickler. What it is, you've got this little empty cup right here. You put that down, and it presses down that thing that I put in there to make sure that that doesn't float up to the top. It's full of air. And when you press that down, all the juice comes up to the top of the rim, so there's no air in there at all. There's a little hole in there that goes over the cup, and it presses the cup down, but the air is inside the cup, not touching the juice or the water. You screw it on, you've got a completely airtight anaerobic environment in there. And then what happens when the carbon dioxide starts forming and it pushes all the juice up, instead of overflowing, it goes into the cup and fills up the little cup and doesn't overflow out of your jar. This little guy, you've got a little water lock here, so no bacteria can get in. The air, the carbon dioxide, can get out, because this is just, there's holes on the top right there. So carbon dioxide can get out, no air can get in. It locks it, and this makes it so your success rate goes up big time. Now, I got this for $20. It's just at the Bosch Kitchen Center over there, so if you're interested in that, they sell them. But I went online to their site, and if you buy 6 or more at a time, it's 40% off. So if there's 6 or more of you in the class that wants to get together and do a group order, let the people at the back desk know. We'll take your names, we'll do a group order, and then you can buy it for 40% off. And I'm not making any money off that. I just want to do it so everybody can have access to stuff. What did you guys think of that, the breakfast?
Oh, it's really good.
Did you love it? Okay, that's more probiotics than pills. More enzymes than pills. All your vitamins and nutrients are exploding out of there. This is great stuff, and it tastes delicious. Could you eat that with breakfast? Could you eat you don't need a lot. With all your probiotic foods, it's not your meal, it's a condiment. It's something to eat with your meal to enhance your meal, okay? But could you eat that? Could you get your kids to eat that? They'll get used to it, yes?
What were the ingredients in the samples we handed out?
Oh, okay. That was, I make a really yummy summer salad with grapefruit, mint, lime zest, pineapple, and grapes and oranges. So anyway, I basically made that salad, mixed it up with jicama, threw it in there, and made a sauerkraut out of that. So that's what was in there. Yes?
You have lemon zest in this one, didn't you?
Lime zest.
Is there any way, will you change any if I don't put the zest? Because it kind of makes it bitter.
Yeah, you don't, like, I just made these up, so I just threw in whatever I liked, and that's the cool thing with lacto-fermented foods, is you can just put whatever in there you like, leave out what you don't like, and it works great. The important part is get your salt in there, get your bacteria inoculation in there, and after you get good at it, you don't even have to do that part, and then keep it airtight. So what I would do if I was at home is put the Perfect Pickler lid on there. Oh, there, thank you. So you can do it 2 ways. You can either put the Perfect Pickler lid on there, leave it for 4 days, and then you put it in the fridge, and you store it in the refrigerator, and these will keep good for months, okay? And the longer they're in there, the bacteria grows at a slower rate in the refrigerator, so it grows fast in a warm environment, slow in a cold environment, but the longer it's in the fridge, like up to 6 months, the flavor actually improves, and it ages kind of like a really nice aged cheese or an aged wine. So it gets better with time. So you can either put the pickler lid on there 4 days, then take it off, put a regular lid on, store it in your fridge for as long as you want, and just make sure the water level always stays above the fruits and vegetables. Or you could just take a regular lid. This is a little less successful, but you can do it. Take a regular lid, put it on, but don't screw it down tight. If you put the lid on tight and the carbon dioxide builds up in there, it's going to explode the glass. So you just want to make sure that it's on, but that the carbon dioxide can get out. Leave it on the counter for 4 days, and then put it in the fridge and store it after that. Now, these bacteria grow the best in a temperature of between 65 and 74 degrees. If it's above 74 degrees, you start to favor the bad bacteria a little bit more. If it's below 65 degrees, the bacteria can't grow fast enough, and it just won't lacto-ferment. So I've found that around 70 degrees is like the sweet spot. It's a really great temperature to do stuff at. And usually our houses are around that temperature anyway. So if it's cold in the winter, what I do is I take this and I put it in the oven and just turn on the light. And then I have a little thermometer in there that tells me the temperature. And then I just keep it about 70 degrees in there. It does it that way in the winter. If it's the summertime and it's really hot in your house, you can get like a cooler and put some of those blue ice blocks in there and just keep those in there so it's not frozen, but it keeps it around 70 degrees, and just make sure it stays 70 degrees, and you can do it that way. But just remember, don't screw the lid on tight until you put it in the refrigerator. Okay, I saw a question over here.
I was just making sure when it's in the fridge that the water level has to stay up.
Yeah, the water level has to stay above the food when it's in the fridge, or again, you're going to get mold or something. Huh? If it dries out, you can just add a little water on the top, yeah. Yes?
This process seems like sort of sensitive. How do you know if it's bad? Like after it's in the fridge, how do you know when it's gone bad after?
It tastes bad. So did you taste that? It was like savory and it tasted good. Bad bacteria tastes gross. It tastes like spoiled food. So if
As long as it tastes okay, you're not gonna like
smell it, taste it, and as long as it smells good and tastes good, you're going to be fine. And it seems like the way I'm explaining it, it seems like a touchy process, but really, like if you use that little pickler thing, and if you do what I talked about, like just adding a little probiotics, like it's almost foolproof if you do that. Okay? Yeah.
I'm sure for demonstration you did all of these.
Yeah, these were just because I was trying out new recipes. I was writing the book.
Do I just want to do one, and when it's finished, do another one?
It's totally up to you. In my house, I love having like 3 or 4 kinds in the fridge at the same time because I don't like eating the same thing over and over again. So I'm a creator, so I love to create new things. So I do it different every single time. But if you like a recipe, keep making that. Or if, we've got 4 different kinds in well, now we have 20 kinds. But normally we've got 4 kinds in our fridge, and we just kind of rotate them around. And because it only takes 3 or 4 days to make, it's pretty easy just to make one, and then when one's half gone, start over again. So I don't want you to be scared of this. I'm telling you all the stuff that went wrong with me, but then I'm teaching you how to do it foolproof. So it's really actually super easy. And to make this, if I hadn't been talking, like that takes, 10 minutes to make that, just to grind it up, stuff it in a jar, put it on the counter. So it's not time consuming, it's not expensive, and it's easy and it's delicious, right?